You can't shake this feeling, this heavy, nameless ache that sits in your chest when you're alone at night. Scrolling through old photos you promised yourself you'd delete. Replaying conversations that ended months ago. Wondering why you still feel like something inside you is broken, unfinished, like a sentence that never found its period. And tonight, right now, we're going to expose exactly what's happening in the hidden corridors of your mind. Because what you're experiencing isn't weakness, isn't failure, isn't evidence that you're incapable of moving on. It's something far more specific, far more insidious, and far more common than you think. It's the psychology of repressed pain after breakup. And it's the invisible wound that keeps you trapped in a cycle of numbness, sudden emotional floods, phantom longing, and this gnawing sense that you're performing healing rather than actually living it. And the psychology of repressed pain after breakup psychology fix isn't about forcing yourself to feel everything at once or pretending the pain doesn't exist. It's about understanding why your mind buried it in the first place, why your body still holds it, and how to finally, systematically, release it so you can stop living in the shadow of someone who's no longer there. Most people think repression is a choice, something they're consciously doing wrong. But here's what no one tells you. Repression is your nervous system's emergency protocol, an ancient survival mechanism that activates when the emotional load exceeds your brain's capacity to process it safely. And in the immediate aftermath of a breakup, especially one that shattered your identity, your future, your sense of safety in the world, your mind makes a split-second calculation that says, if I let all of this in right now, if I feel the full weight of this loss, this betrayal, this ending, I will not be able to function. I will not be able to go to work, pay my bills, interact with other humans. So instead, I'm going to compartmentalize. I'm going to seal off this pain in a psychological vault. I'm going to numb just enough to survive, and I'll deal with it later. Except later never comes. Your mind never sends you a notification that says, you're ready now. Instead, the repressed pain begins to leak. It seeps into your dreams, your irritability, your inexplicable anxiety, your inability to feel excited about anything, your tendency to sabotage new connections, and you start living in this strange twilight zone where you're not fully grieving, but you're also not fully present. You're stuck, frozen in an emotional purgatory that exhausts you without you even understanding why. Pause. Notice what that just revealed. You've felt this before, haven't you? That sense that something is living inside you that you can't quite name, can't quite touch, but you know it's there, shaping every decision, every reaction, every moment of unexpected sadness that seems to come from nowhere. Ask yourself this now. When was the last time you let yourself fully feel the loss without immediately distracting yourself, without reaching for your phone, without filling the silence with noise, without telling yourself you should be over this by now? Let's go deeper into why your mind creates this pattern in the first place. Because understanding the mechanism is the first step toward dismantling it. And here's the truth that most people miss. Your brain isn't trying to hurt you with repression. It's trying to protect you. It's using the same system that helped your ancestors survive physical threats. The same mechanism that allows soldiers to function in combat and trauma survivors to get through the immediate aftermath of crisis. It's called dissociation, and it's your mind's way of creating distance between your conscious awareness and experiences that feel too overwhelming, too destabilizing, too dangerous to integrate in real time. And during a breakup, especially one where you didn't see it coming, where you were blindsided, abandoned, replaced, or slowly eroded by someone's withdrawal, your nervous system interprets this as a survival threat. Because for millions of years of human evolution, being cast out of your primary attachment bond actually was life-threatening. Exile from the tribe meant death. And even though your rational mind knows you'll survive this breakup, your primitive brain, your limbic system, is screaming danger, danger. You are not safe. You are alone. You will not survive. And that terror, that primal panic, is designed to do. It splits. It creates a partition. It puts the terror, the grief, the rage, the humiliation, the loss of identity, the death of your imagined future into a separate chamber and throws a heavy door shut. And for a while, this works. You're able to function. You're able to smile at work. You're able to say, "I'm fine. Really, it's for the best." But here's what happens next. The pain doesn't dissolve just because you're not looking at it. It doesn't evaporate because you're busy. Instead, it begins to colonize your unconscious mind. It starts influencing your thoughts, your behaviors, your physical sensations, your relationship patterns from the shadows. And this is why people who think they're completely over a breakup will suddenly find themselves unable to breathe in a grocery store because they heard a song, or why they'll sabotage a promising new relationship because their body remembers betrayal, even though their mind ... says this person is different, or why they'll feel chronically exhausted for no apparent medical reason. Because repressed pain isn't passive, it's active. It's a constant drain on your psychological resources, like running an application in the background of your phone that you can't see, but that's slowly depleting your battery. And the longer it stays repressed, the more sophisticated your defenses become. You develop elaborate coping mechanisms. You become really good at staying busy, at intellectualizing your emotions, at helping everyone else with their problems so you don't have to face your own. You might even start a new relationship quickly, not because you've healed, but because having someone new feels like proof that you're fine, that you're over it. Except you're not. You're just layering a new story on top of an unfinished one. And eventually, inevitably, the foundation cracks. But here's the truth. Decision to repress wasn't wrong. It was necessary. It was intelligent. It was the best option available at the time. And recognizing this, Thanking this protective mechanism, rather than shaming it, is crucial. Because you can't heal what you're judging. You can't integrate what you're rejecting. And so many people are stuck, not because they're broken, but because they're at war with themselves, hating the part of them that won't let go, frustrated with the part that still feels, force themselves to be somewhere they're not. And this internal conflict, this self-abandonment, this is often more painful than the original breakup. You feel it making sense already. Now let's talk about the hidden emotional triggers that keep repressed pain alive and active, because this is where most people get confused. They think triggers are obvious things like seeing their ex or hearing their name. But the truth is, the most powerful triggers are subtle, almost invisible. They're sensory fragments, micro moments, contextual cues that your brain associated with safety, love, and connection during the relationship. And these associations were formed outside of your conscious awareness, encoded deep in your implicit memory system, which is why you can be having a perfectly normal day and then suddenly feel a wave of inexplicable sadness. And you'll search your conscious mind for a reason. You'll blame your job, your friends, your lack of sleep, never realizing that 3 minutes ago you walked past someone wearing the same cologne. Or you saw a blue Honda Civic like the one they drove. Or you heard a laugh that had the same pitch and rhythm as theirs, and your nervous system recognized it, responded to it, flooded your body with the neurochemical signature of loss, and now you're drowning in feelings that seem sourceless. And because you can't identify the trigger, you can't process the response, so it just accumulates. It adds to the backlog of unfelt feeling, and over time, your life becomes smaller, more controlled, more careful. You start unconsciously avoiding places, activities, types of people, all in an effort to avoid these invisible landmines. But in doing so, you're also avoiding life, avoiding spontaneity, avoiding presence, because you can't selectively numb. You can't wall off pain without also walling off joy, connection, pleasure, meaning. And this is the cruel mathematics of repression. The more you protect yourself from hurt, the less you're able to feel anything at all. And you end up in this gray, muted existence where you're safe, but you're not alive. You're surviving, but you're not living. And somewhere deep down, you know this. You feel the cost of your protection, and it's exhausting. What no one tells you is that triggers aren't the enemy. They're actually messengers. They're your psyche's way of trying to bring your attention to what still needs to be processed. Every trigger is an invitation, a doorway back to the unfelt feeling. And when you start to understand them this way, when you stop trying to avoid them and start getting curious about them, something shifts. They lose their power to ambush you. They become information, data points on your healing map. And this shift from victim of your triggers to investigator of your triggers is one of the most empowering moves you can make. Let me tell you about Emma, a 32-year-old architect who came out of a 6-year relationship that ended when her fiancé admitted he'd been emotionally checked out for over a year, but didn't know how to tell her. And Emma determined to be mature about it, determined to prove she was strong and evolved, handled the breakup with what everyone called grace. She helped him move out, divided their belongings without conflict, even wished him well, and then she threw herself into work, into fitness, into aggressive self-improvement routine that looked from the outside like healing. Except 8 months later, Emma found herself having panic attacks at her desk, feeling suddenly unable to breathe, feeling like the walls were closing in, and she couldn't understand why, because she thought she'd done everything right. She'd processed, she'd journaled, she'd moved on. But what Emma didn't realize was that she'd processed intellectually, but never somatically. She'd understood the breakup in her mind, but never felt it in her body. She'd performed grief without actually grieving, and all that unfelt emotion had been building pressure. And her panic attacks were her body's way of saying, I can't hold this anymore. You have to feel this now. And it wasn't until she started working with a somatic therapist, until she gave herself permission to stop being graceful and start being honest, until she let herself rage and weep and fall apart in ways that felt ugly and uncontrolled, that the panic attacks stopped because she finally gave her body what it had been begging for: the completion of an interrupted emotional cycle, the release of energy that had been trapped in her nervous system, waiting, building, demanding to be felt. And this is what I want you to understand. You can't think your way out of repressed pain. You have to feel your way out. You have to give your body permission to complete what it started, to express what it held back, to move the energy that's been stuck. And this brings us to the weapons, the practical tools that will allow you to end the psychology of repressed pain after breakup pattern tonight. Not by bypassing your feelings, but by finally, safely, systematically allowing them to move through you. Weapon 1 is somatic tracking and conscious reassociation. And here's exactly how to use it. Step 1, recognize the trigger. For the next 7 days, I want you to become a detective of your own emotional shifts. Every time you notice a change in your mood, your energy, your physical sensations, a sudden tightness in your chest, a wave of sadness, a flash of anxiety, a feeling of disconnection, pause and backtrack exactly 60 seconds. What were you doing? What were you looking at? Who were you with? What sounds were in the environment? What smells? And write it down. Don't analyze it yet. Don't judge it. Just document it. Because repressed pain operates the gaps of awareness. And by bringing conscious attention to these micro moments, you're beginning to illuminate the underground river of emotion that's been flowing beneath your daily life. And this practice of tracking creates what psychologists call the observing self, a part of you that can witness your experience without being consumed by it. And that distance, that capacity to notice without being overwhelmed, is the foundation of all emotional regulation and healing. Step 2, reframe the story. After 7 days of tracking, look for patterns. Are there certain times of day when shifts happen more frequently? Certain activities certain types of interactions. And instead of seeing these triggers as evidence that something is wrong with you, instead of thinking, I should be over this by now, reframe them as your psyche communicating, as your system trying to guide you back to unfinished business. Because every trigger is actually a breadcrumb, a clue. And when you start to see them this way, they transform from enemies into allies, from threats into invitations. And this reframe alone reduces the secondary suffering, the shame and frustration you feel about still feeling, which is often more painful than the original feeling. Step 3. Replace the pattern. Choose one recurring trigger from your tracking, just one to start. And the next time it arises, instead of immediately distracting yourself, instead of reaching for your phone or food or work or anything to make it stop, set a timer for 90 seconds. That's all. Just 90 seconds, and let yourself feel it. Close your eyes if you're in a private space. Place your hand on your heart or your belly and ask, where am I feeling this in my body? Not what am I thinking about this, but where is the sensation? Is it in your throat, your chest, your stomach, your shoulders? And then breathe into that space. Imagine your breath traveling directly to that sensation, surrounding it, softening it, not trying to make it go away, but just acknowledging it, witnessing it. And something remarkable happens when you do this. After 90 seconds, the intensity peaks and then begins to shift, not because you did anything to change it, but because you stopped resisting it. And this teaches your nervous system something revolutionary, that feelings aren't dangerous, they're temporary, they're survivable. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Each time you practice this, you're rewiring the neural pathways that created the repression response in the first place. You're building new circuitry that says, I can handle this. I don't need to run from this. I am safe enough to feel this. You're starting to see it now. Weapon 2 is narrative archaeology and grief completion. And this is where we excavate the stories you've been telling yourself, because repressed pain often lives in the gap between what happened and what you've allowed yourself to admit happened. And most people, in an effort to move on quickly, in an effort to be fair or mature or not be the bitter ex, create sanitized versions of their breakup story. Versions where nobody's really at fault, where both people tried their best, where it was just timing or compatibility. And while this might feel emotionally safer, while it might make it easier to stay friends, or co-parent, or maintain social circles, it's often a lie, a protective fiction that prevents you from accessing the raw truth of what you actually experienced. And until you tell yourself the unsanitized version, the version where you're allowed to name harm, betrayal, abandonment, cruelty, where you're allowed to say, hurt me. They broke promises. They made me feel worthless. You can't complete the grief cycle. You're stuck in a kind of emotional purgatory where you're too defended to hurt, but not healed enough to be free. Let me tell you about Marcus, a 40-year-old teacher who spent 3 years with someone who slowly eroded his self-worth through subtle criticism, emotional unavailability, and periodic withdrawals of affection that he could never predict or prevent. And when she finally left him for someone else, Marcus told everyone, including himself, that they just wanted different things, that the relationship ran its course, and he spoke about her with careful neutrality, never saying anything negative, priding himself on taking the high road. But 18 months later, Marcus was in therapy, unable to understand why he couldn't trust anyone, why he felt paralyzed in new dating situations, why he had nightmares about being chaste. And his therapist asked him to do something radical. Write 2 versions of his relationship story. The public version he'd been telling, and the private version, the secret truth he'd never said out loud. And when Marcus finally wrote the private version, when he let himself say, "She was cruel, she manipulated me, she made me question my reality, she destroyed my confidence, she cheated and then blamed me for not being enough," something inside him shattered. And what followed was 3 days of the deepest grief he'd ever experienced, sobbing in ways that scared him, feeling rage in ways he didn't know he was capable of. But when it passed, when the storm finally cleared, Marcus described feeling lighter, clearer, more himself than he'd felt in years, because he'd finally told the truth. He'd finally honored his actual experience instead of the story he thought he was supposed to tell. And in doing so, he'd completed the grief that had been frozen, waiting, silently poisoning his capacity for trust and connection. Step 1. Recognize the trigger. The trigger here is linguistic. It's the words you use when you tell your breakup story. Notice if you find yourself minimizing, rationalizing, using phrases like, "It wasn't that bad," or "They didn't mean to," or "I'm partially responsible," when deep down, you know those statements are protecting you from a more painful truth. And this protective language, while well-intentioned, keeps you from accessing the emotional core of what happened. It keeps you in your head and out of your heart. And healing, real healing, requires you to drop from your head into your heart, into your body, into the raw, undefended truth of your experience. Step 2. Reframe the story. Here's what I want you to do. Find a private space, get a journal, or open a document on your computer and write. The heading, "What actually happened, the truth I haven't told," and then give yourself permission to write the messy, unfair, unenlightened version. The version where you're not spiritual about it, where you don't have to be fair or balanced, where you can be angry, devastated, betrayed, where you can name what they did wrong, how they hurt you, what you'll never forgive. And this isn't about sending this to anyone. This isn't about making them understand. This is about you finally witnessing your own pain, validating your own experience, saying, "This happened, it hurt, I am not making it up." And as you write, notice what happens in your body. Does your jaw clench? Does your chest tighten? Do tears come? Because wherever your body responds, that's where the repressed pain is stored. And the act of writing it, naming it, is the beginning of metabolizing it, of breaking it down into something your system can finally process. ... into the new one, finally recreated, understood, unique encounters, often different, satisfying, stories, tightening, powerful effects. This pain is stored from here. Understand. Step 3. Replace the pattern. After you've written the unsanitized truth, Read it out loud to yourself. And as you read, place both hands on your heart and say after each paragraph, I see you. I believe you. What you felt was real. Because here's what most people don't realize. The validation you're seeking doesn't have to come from your ex, from your friends, from anyone external. The validation that heals is the validation you give yourself. It's the moment you stop abandoning your own experience. Stop gaslighting yourself with maybe I'm overreacting or maybe it wasn't that bad, and instead say, this was my experience. It was real. It mattered. I matter. And that act of self-witnessing, of being the compassionate presence you needed when the breakup happened but didn't have, begins to heal the deepest wound of all, which isn't the breakup itself, but your abandonment of yourself in the aftermath, your refusal to honor your own pain, your betrayal of your own truth in service of being acceptable, mature, not too much. What no one tells you is that you cannot move on from what you will not first acknowledge. You cannot release what you will not first hold. And this is why so many people who appear healed, who claim to be over it, are actually just really skilled at repression. And then they repeat the same patterns, attract the same unavailable people, because the unprocessed pain is still running the show from backstage, still protecting them from vulnerability, still scanning for danger, still proving that it's not safe to fully let someone in. Weapon 3 is body-based discharge and nervous system completion. Because here's something critical that most people miss. Your body is holding the grief your mind won't let you feel. It's stored in your fascia, your muscles, your organs, your cellular memory. And you can talk about your breakup for years. You can understand it intellectually. You can have perfect insight. But if you don't release the emotion from your soma, from your physical body, you will remain trapped in a state of chronic activation. Your nervous system will stay stuck in threat mode, which is why you're exhausted, why you're irritable, why you can't sleep well, why you overreact to small things, because your body is still back there, still in the moment of rupture, still waiting for the resolution that never came. And cognitive processing alone cannot complete this. You need to work directly with your body, with movement, with sound, with practices that speak the nervous system's native language of sensation and release. Step 1. Recognize the trigger. The trigger for body work is the feeling of being stuck, frozen, restless, like there's something inside you that needs to come out, but you don't know how to access it. It often manifests as physical tension you can't explain, as pacing, as wanting to jump out of your skin. And this restlessness is actually your body's way of saying, I have energy that needs to move. I have an incomplete response that needs to complete. Because in moments of emotional rupture, your body prepares to fight or flee. Your system floods with activation energy. But you do neither. You freeze. You stay civil. You pack boxes calmly. You have difficult conversations with measured words, and all that mobilization energy gets trapped. It stays in your system with nowhere to go, and over time, it calcifies into chronic tension, anxiety, hypervigilance, depression, collapse, numbness. Step 2, reframe the story. The reframe is this: your physical symptoms are not problems to be fixed. They're messages to be heard. They're your body's intelligent attempt to complete an unfinished process. And once you understand this, once you stop pathologizing your anxiety or your numbness and start seeing them as trapped energy seeking release, everything changes. You move from fighting your body to partnering with it. From trying to control your symptoms to getting curious about what they're trying to tell you. Step 3, replace the pattern. Here's the practice, and I want you to actually do this, not just understand it. Find a private space where you can be loud and uncontrolled without judgment. Maybe your car, maybe your home when no one's there, maybe even a therapist's office or a soundproofed room. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Put on music that matches the energy of what you're feeling. If there's rage underneath, something intense and aggressive. Is there sadness, something mournful and slow? And then let your body move however it wants to move, without choreography, without making it look like anything. You might punch the air. You might shake your limbs. You might collapse on the floor. You might rock. You might make sounds, groans, screams, sobs. And the only instruction is this: do not think. Do not perform. Do not try to do it right. Just let your body do what it's been wanting to do, what it needed to do in the moment of heartbreak, but couldn't. And this practice, called somatic discharge or emotional release work, is how you complete the interrupted fight or flight response, how you move the trapped energy out of your system. And you'll know it's working because afterward, you'll feel exhausted, sometimes tearful, but also lighter, more spacious, more here, like you've put down a weight you didn't realize you were carrying. And if you do this even 3 times, you'll notice your baseline anxiety decreases, your sleep improves, your capacity for joy increases, because your nervous system is finally getting the message that the threat is over, that it's safe to come out of survival mode and back into your body, back into the present moment. Pause. Notice what that just revealed. Ask yourself this now. When was the last time you let your body fully express what it's been holding, without controlling it, without making it appropriate, without shutting it down? Let me tell you about Sophia, a 26-year-old nurse who ended a toxic relationship where she'd been gaslighted and manipulated for 2 years. And Sophia prided herself on being strong, on not letting him break her. So she left, blocked him, and moved forward with what looked like determination. Except 6 months later, she started having debilitating migraines, shoulders that she could barely turn her head, and multiple doctors found nothing wrong. But her body was screaming. It was holding all the rage she never let herself feel, all the times she swallowed her words, All the moments she made herself small. All the screams she silenced. And it wasn't until a friend dragged her to a trauma-informed yoga class where the teacher created space for emotional release that Sophia finally let go. In the middle of a hip-opening pose, she started sobbing. And then the sobs turned into this guttural roar she didn't know she was capable of. And the teacher held space, didn't rush her, didn't make her stop. And afterward, Sophia described feeling like she'd exorcised something, like a demon had been living in her body and had finally left. And within 2 weeks, her migraines disappeared. Her shoulder tension released because her body had finally been allowed to say what her mind couldn't, to express what had been buried. And this is the power of somatic work. It bypasses your defenses. It goes straight to the source, and it releases what talk alone cannot touch. Weapon 4 is relational repair and vulnerability practice. Because the final piece of dismantling repressed pain is learning to share it, to be witnessed in it, to let safe others hold space for your full humanity, including your wounds. Because repression often happens in isolation, in the belief that you have to handle this alone, that your pain is too much, too messy, too shameful to bring to others. And that isolation becomes its own trauma. It reinforces the story that you're alone, that no one can handle your depth, that connection requires you to be okay first. And this is a lie that keeps you stuck. Because healing, real healing, is relational. It happens in the presence of attuned others who can see you in your pain and not turn away, who can hold space without trying to fix. And that experience of being seen and still accepted, of being vulnerable and still safe, rewrites your attachment patterns. It teaches your nervous system that connection doesn't require performance, that you can be real and still be loved. Step 1, recognize the trigger. The trigger here is the impulse to say, "I'm fine," when you're not. To decline invitations because you don't have energy for the mask. To isolate because it feels easier than explaining. And every time you choose the mask over truth, every time you choose isolation over imperfect connection, you're reinforcing the repression. You're teaching yourself that your real feelings aren't welcome, that who you actually are is too much. And that belief over time becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that shapes all your relationships. Step 2, reframe the story. The reframe is understanding that vulnerability isn't weakness or neediness, it's courage. It's the most direct path to genuine connection. Because when you let someone see you without the mask, when you share your mess, your unresolved grief, your confusion, and they don't run, they don't judge, they just sit with you, you experience something that rewires your brain. Like, I need to tell you the truth about where I am. I'm struggling more than I've let on. I've been pretending I'm fine, but I'm not. And I don't need you to fix anything. I just need you to know. And then notice what happens. Notice if there's relief in your body when you stop performing. Notice how they respond. And if they meet you with presence and compassion, you've found a safe person to practice vulnerability with. And if they minimize or try to silver lining you out of your feelings, you've learned they can't hold depth. and that's okay. That's information, not about your worth, but about their capacity. And you can adjust accordingly without making it mean something's wrong with you. And over time, as you practice this with safe people, as you build a small circle of witnesses who can see you in your totality, you'll notice that the repression loosens because you're no longer carrying everything alone. You're distributing the weight, and that's what we were designed for. We are relational beings. We heal in connection, not in isolation. And the irony is that the very thing you think will drive people away, your realness, your pain, your unfinished healing, is actually what creates the deepest bonds. Because everyone is secretly relieved when someone else goes first, when someone else drops the mask and gives them permission to do the same. Now we integrate all 4 weapons into a sustainable practice that will continue to dissolve the repressed pain, not just tonight, but in the weeks and months ahead. Because healing isn't a destination, it's a process. It's a daily choice to feel instead of numb, to be honest instead of perform, to move toward what you've been avoiding instead of running. And here's how you make it practical. Every morning, before you start your day, do a 60-second body scan. Close your eyes, take 3 deep breaths, and ask, what am I carrying today? Notice where there's tension, heaviness, and just name it without trying to change it. I'm carrying sadness today. I'm carrying anxiety. And that simple act of naming creates space. It reminds you that you are not your emotions. You are the awareness holding them. And from that space, you have choice. And then throughout your day, practice the 90-second feeling rule from Weapon 1. Whenever you notice a shift, a trigger, give yourself 90 seconds to feel it fully before moving on. And once a week, do the body-based release practice from Weapon 3. Give yourself 10 minutes to move, to sound, to let your body express what it's holding. And once a week, practice vulnerability from Weapon 4. Share something real with someone safe. Let yourself be seen. And once a month, revisit your narrative from Weapon 2. Read what you wrote. Notice if the charge has decreased, if new truths have emerged. And this isn't about perfection. There will be days when you can't do any of this, when you fall back into old patterns. And that's okay. That's human. The practice isn't never repressing again. It's catching yourself sooner, being gentler when you do, and having tools to return to presence, to return to feeling. And over time, this becomes your new baseline. Not performing healing, but actually healing. Not avoiding pain, but metabolizing it. And on the other side of that process is a version of you that's more resilient, more compassionate, more alive. Because pain that's fully felt doesn't destroy you. It deepens you. It cracks you open to more empathy, more presence, more capacity for real love. And this is the unexpected gift hidden in your repressed pain. It's not just suffering. It's the raw material of your transformation. And if you're willing to face it, to feel it, to move through it instead of around it, you're more whole, more real, more capable of the kind of love that isn't based on fear or fantasy, but on 2 people showing up in their full truth. And that possibility starts tonight, starts now, with the simple decision to stop running from what you've been avoiding and start turning toward it with curiosity and courage, knowing that you're not broken. You've never been broken. You're just someone who loved and lost and is now learning to find themselves again in the wreckage. And every step you take toward your pain, every moment you choose honesty over performance, every tear you finally let yourself cry, every truth you finally let yourself speak, is bringing you closer to freedom. The freedom that comes not from never having been hurt, but from being hurt and healing anyway. From being broken and discovering that the breaking is what lets the light in. And that light is already here. It's in this moment of recognition, in this willingness to see yourself clearly, to feel fully, to stop abandoning yourself in pursuit of being acceptable to others. And as you practice these weapons, as you bring consciousness to what's been unconscious, as you complete what's been interrupted, you'll notice something miraculous. The phantom pain begins to fade. The triggers lose their charge. You start to feel present in your life again, excited about things, open to connection. And one day, maybe not tomorrow, but someday soon, you'll realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're living. You're here, fully here. And the pain that once defined you has been integrated, has become wisdom, has become the foundation of a life more authentic than anything you had before. And you'll look back at this moment, this night, when you finally stopped repressing and started healing, and you'll recognize it as the turning point, the moment everything changed. Not because the pain disappeared, but because you finally stopped being afraid of it. And in facing it, you discovered you were strong enough, brave enough, whole enough all along. You just had to remember. You just had to come home to yourself. And that's what's happening right now, in this moment, as something in you shifts, softens, recognizes itself in these words, and says, yes, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to stop performing and start healing. I'm ready to feel instead of numb. I'm ready to be real instead of acceptable. And that readiness, that willingness, that's all you need. Because the path forward isn't about having it all figured out. It's about taking one honest step and then another and another, trusting that your body knows how to heal, that your psyche knows what it needs, that the pain you've been running from is actually the doorway to your freedom. And every time you walk through that door, every time you choose to feel, to witness, to express, to share, you're choosing yourself, you're choosing life, you're choosing the courageous path of being fully human in a world that constantly asks you to be less. And that choice, that radical act of self-love and self-honesty, is what will finally, truly, completely set you free.